I mean, and that's really the point of doing hypnotherapy. They've tried talk therapy, they've tried coaching, they've tried all of these different things, and they've tried willpower, discipline, like all of the different things, and they still keep kind of hitting the same pattern, the same block. We then go in and we're able to pretty easily identify what the root is of that. People can talk to me, they can tell me all about the trauma, which is helpful while we're in there, because then it helps me connect the dots, or it helps me help them connect the dots. Oftentimes things come up that you wouldn't necessarily like connect the dots consciously. A lot of times it's not necessarily one trauma memory. It's a culmination of multiple small things that happened that create belief in someone's life about who they are. And that is actually the driving force behind why they end up in the same relationships, or they can't make more money, or whatever it is.
Hi, I'm Jamie, your friendly neighborhood trauma recovery coach, author, and psychologist. Welcome to the Managing Mental Health podcast. Join us as we talk to leading psychologists about all areas of mental health, and we hear from real people who have overcome real mental health struggles, who can now share hope and encouragement for us all. Our guest today is Allie Rose. Allie is a certified clinical hypnotherapist, licensed social worker, and subconscious success coach. She helps high-achieving women stop self-sabotage, feel safe being seen, and rewire their minds to finally receive more love, wealth, and wellness from within. Allie, welcome to the show.
Thank you so much for having me, Jamie. I'm happy to be here.
I was so excited to see that your area of expertise was hypnotherapy, because that's an area that I've been curious about for many, many years, both personally and professionally. So it's great to hear a professional perspective on that. And I think a lot of our listeners probably have some of the same questions I do. So this should be interesting.
Wonderful. Well, I can't wait to dive in. Hopefully I can answer all of your questions.
Good. Well, just start off, just tell us a little bit about yourself, what you do exactly, and how you got into this field.
Yeah, absolutely. So I actually was a traditionally trained talk therapist for about 10 years, and I still do a bit of talk therapy. However, for my own personal self, I decided to start to explore some other healing modalities, just because I kept thinking that there had to be some way to get deeper and potentially to get faster results. And so I myself had 3 RTT, which is the specific type of hypnotherapy that I'm trained in. I had 3 RTT hypnotherapy sessions, and it was mind-blowing. It helped me break through something that I had been carrying since childhood that I couldn't necessarily like talk my way through. I would experience relief from it, and then it would come back. I could like literally physically feel it as if I was carrying it pretty heavy. And so I decided that because I had experienced such a huge transformation in my own life, that I wanted to train in it, and I wanted to bring this to my clients as well, just to see, what that would look like to go deeper with them and to go a little bit faster with them through some of the things that we had been working on for years. So that's kind of what led me to the training. And that's really most of what I do with my clients now is, I would say it's kind of a blend of like the coaching and the hypnotherapy work.
Okay, awesome. And so after those 3 sessions, you said that helped. It made a great deal of difference compared to what you'd already been through in talk therapy. How long would you say that you had been through talk therapy at that point?
I would say up to that point, I'm a big believer in talk therapy. I think it has its place, and it can be extremely valuable. And so, I mean, I started going to therapy whenever I was younger, based on some things that happened in the family, moved away from it. And then once I was in college, had went to a therapist, and then it had been on and off throughout my life based on kind of things that were going on in my life, just maybe needing that extra support to kind of navigate through some things. And then of course I'm a believer in like, walking your talk. And so, wanting to work through my things as I'm also guiding other people through their things as well. So throughout my whole life, I was in it.
Gotcha. And I think that's pretty common. I think it's more uncommon for a person just to start therapy and just like go nonstop for,
Right.
years and years. I
Right.
think most people will go initially, get some work, then kind of, it sort of relieves some of that pressure
Right.
internally. And then so you're like, okay, now I'm going to work on myself and live life, and then kind of go back a few times. I know that's kind of what I've experienced as well,
Yeah.
a little bit here and there. So, okay. And so when you went through those three hypnotherapy sessions,
Mhm.
what did it, after that, what did it feel like? How did it make you feel about those struggles that you had been dealing with off and on?
I think that that's where, so obviously there can be physical manifestations of the things that you experience emotionally. And so I would always say it felt like there was something kind of heavy on my back. Like a lot of the stuff that I did work on in those sessions was feeling safe in different areas of life. And so I just noticed I could feel a physical difference. I felt like something had been lifted off of me. And really, I say that hypnotherapy is about ease. It's about removing those limiting beliefs, those old feelings, the heaviness that you might feel. So it just makes it easier to do the things that you want to do. So I practically and tangibly could feel the difference, but I also saw the difference in things that I had been wanting to do for years, but hadn't yet felt safe to do. I saw it practically reflected in my business and my bank account. I'll say that. So,
Mm,
so yeah, it was multiple layers of actually being able to feel the difference from those sessions.
okay. Interesting. Very interesting.
Yeah.
So, I myself, I've kind of both personally and professionally kind of been on the fence with hypnosis for a long time.
Mhm.
Because, most everybody else, I would assume I've seen the stage shows, I've seen the carnival shows, et cetera, you
Yeah.
know, hypno, hypnosis. And then even professionally, like when I started studying psychology, my first bachelor's degree, of course, we learned the history of psychology, which, you know, went back to Freud and,
Right.
all of the start of that and the hypnosis involved there. And so there's always been, I guess, a little bit of skepticism, like I said, wondering how much of it is real,
Mhm.
how it really works. So, and now that you have this experience, so you
Mhm.
went through it personally, and then that gave you the confidence and the desire to go into training, get certified in it, trained in it, and use it to help others.
Yes.
How do we know that it's real, that it's not just a trick of the mind, so to speak?
I don't necessarily know, like, when we say trick of the mind, that's interesting because I think that our mind is so, can be mysterious, right?
Mm,
And so we have the conscious mind and we have the subconscious mind. And so talk therapy deals with the conscious mind, what we're aware of, that's what we're talking through. And hypnotherapy really deals with the subconscious mind, which is below our conscious level. And so I think it seems kind of mysterious because it is at that level that we're not consciously aware of. So I would say for me, I knew that it was real because I felt it myself, but the client session that I was like, this is real, was I had a client who had been struggling with infertility for about 2 years. And she came to me early in my practice, and I was nervous, of course, because I was a bit early in my hypnotherapy practice. And we just went for it. 30 days after our session, she was pregnant. So, from unexplained, the doctors had said unexplained infertility. She was fine in terms of all of the medical testing. Her husband was fine in terms of all of the medical testing. And so we were really able to use hypnotherapy to help remove the emotional blocks that were
Mhm.
impacting the physical aspects of her not being able to conceive again. And so when that happened, I was like, this is real. This is like there's a baby on the way. Well, twins. There are
Oh,
babies
wow.
on the way, right? As a result of us doing this work and removing this subconscious block that her mind had created to keep her safe. This
Mhm.
is real. So yeah.
Yeah, cool. Very cool. Yeah, that's wild because as you're saying this, I'm just think all these examples are popping up of like people that have had physical injuries. And the doctors will say, oh, well, you're paralyzed. You will never walk again.
Right.
But their determination says otherwise. And they're like, no, I'm not listening to that. I am. And then 6 months later, they're walking, you know. So there's absolutely something there in that subconscious that whether we can tap into it ourselves or with the help of hypnotherapy, obviously, that it can be reached. Very cool. Very
Yeah.
cool.
Yeah.
Um,
Absolutely.
what are some of the common myths about hypnosis?
I I would say that the biggest one is that it's mind control, that that you completely lose control and that a hypnotherapist can make you do things that you don't want to do. I often jokingly kind of say, if that was the case, then I would be a millionaire billionaire because if I could make people do things that they didn't want to do, I just
Yeah.
have people like writing checks to me, wiring
Uh,
money to me,
hand me your debit card and tell me the
Right.
pin.
I mean, obviously I wouldn't do that because I'm a good human and I would never want to do that to someone. But I just if I could do that, right? Like there are so many things that would be different in the world if people could really do that, right? So I think that that's the biggest misconception is that it's mind control, meaning someone else is going to have control over you. One of the things that I
Mhm,
always tell all of my clients is that you are in complete control the entire time.
mhm.
So yeah.
So you're not going to make me quack like a duck.
Nope, no quacking happens. You know, you typically remember what comes up during a session. You as you get farther away from the session, you might not remember the exact scenes or memories that we go to, but
Mhm.
right after a session, you will be able to remember, what we talked about in the session.
Yeah. So does a person become completely unconscious in terms of falling asleep?
Nope.
Is it?
Yeah, it's not about being asleep. So, it's just about being open and receptive and suggestible and really so we all go in and out of hypnosis all the time throughout the day. We just don't realize it. So I want to ask you if you've ever driven a familiar route
Hmm.
and you get in your car and you get to the location and you're like, oh my gosh, I don't even realize, like I don't even remember the drive, right?
Uh-huh. Yeah, you're on autopilot. Yeah.
You're on autopilot. So obviously you're driving your car, so you're not asleep, right?
Mhm. Right.
But part of you has gone to sleep. Part of you is not fully awake because you don't remember that consciously, right?
Hmm.
That is really the state that when we get you into a hypnotic state, that is the state that you are in. You are not fully asleep, but you're not fully awake either.
Hmm. Okay. Yeah, that makes sense because yeah, that's a perfect example too. Because and usually when that happens, at least when I've experienced it, it's because my mind is I'm thinking of something else. Like I'm
Right.
thinking of what's coming up later in the day or what I need to do or a conversation I had. And I'm sort of kind of in that rumination stage in a sense. So my mind's
Mhm.
sort of playing this whole other conversation or
Right.
scenario while the other part of my mind is driving, and that's kind of scary. But you know, I can see and I can hear, I think. But yeah, okay. Um, so when you do this process, do you and you said you could probably already answered this a little bit, but because you said you still use some talk therapy and in combination with this, but do you obviously spend time with the person first to find out what it is they want to work on?
Yeah, so the process is that for each hypnotherapy session that I do, we have a target for the session. So it's kind of similar to EMDR in that with EMDR, there are targets for the sessions, right?
Uh-huh.
So prior to the session, what's really important to me, number one, is establishing safety within the relationship to make sure that because a lot of people have never done this before, I think it's really important that they trust me, that they
Mm,
know that if we are to go in and, you know, obviously people have trauma, and so that they can trust that I can hold that space for them. I always send everyone a what I call my safe place hypnosis to listen to prior to our session. It kind of just primes their mind and helps them equate being in hypnosis with a safe place. Then we have a pre-session, which is where we really get clear on how is this issue showing up in your life? How is this impacting your relationships, your finances, you know, your health? And then if this problem were to disappear from your life forever, what would your life look like after that? How would it be different? What are the positive things, the positive results that you would see? And the reason that we do that is because during each session, I record a custom audio recording for each person to listen to post session. And really, what I put on that is what their life will look like without the issue. And they listen to that for 30 days post session.
wow. Sign me up. I'm sold. I want that. I want that. What does your life look like after we get rid of this issue? Okay. Okay. What if, and this kind of comes from my background in trauma studies and professional, but what if you got a person that's, let's say they're, you know, they know that there's some issues in their life, but they may not be aware
Mhm.
fully of what that root cause is. Because, with trauma, sometimes your mind will literally just block it out. And so
Mhm.
that you are uneasy in certain circumstances and with certain people, or that you always have relationship problems, and it kind of, but you're not necessarily tying the two together. So maybe they can't tell you up front, hey, this is absolutely the root cause. I just know I'm having these problems over and over again.
Right. I mean, and that's really the point of doing hypnotherapy, is because if you were able to figure out what the root was, then you probably wouldn't need to come to me. So most often when I meet with people, they've tried talk therapy, they've tried coaching, they've tried all of these different things,
Mhm.
and they've tried willpower, discipline, like all of the different things, and they still keep kind of hitting the same pattern, the same block, like you said, maybe being in the same relationship, or
Mhm.
reaching a cap on their income, or certain things like that. And then we then go in and we're able to pretty easily identify what the root is of that. And like I said, if you already knew what the root was, people can talk to me. They can tell me all about the trauma, which is helpful while we're in there, because
Uh-huh.
then it helps me connect the dots, or it helps me help them connect the dots. But oftentimes things come up that you wouldn't necessarily like connect the dots
Mhm.
consciously, right? Like a lot of times it's not necessarily one trauma memory. It's a culmination of multiple small things that happened that
Mhm.
create a belief in someone's life about who they are, or about the world, or about other people. And that is actually the driving force behind why they end up in the same relationships, or they can't make more money, or whatever it is, right?
Yeah, that was one of my other questions, was that belief part, because that's what is often, like you said, limiting people in their relationships, in their career, in achievement. Um, they the belief about themselves that they've accepted or been dealt from the trauma, especially childhood trauma, because the brain's in development, and when you're a child and either you're treated a certain way, you're talked to a certain way, you tend to believe, you know, whatever is being told to you, in a sense, about yourself.
Right.
Um, Interesting. Okay. Um, so if a person goes through the treatments, does that does it last forever? Is there like a time limit? Do they need to come back later? Does
Um,
it just kind of depend?
I think it depends on the issue, right? So some things are very time limited, meaning obviously if someone's coming to me for infertility, you have a baby, there's that, right? So you've gotten the result of the session, right?
Right, right.
So, or smoking, that's another one, right? And typically when someone does hypnotherapy for smoking, it's they do the sessions and they're done, right? For some people, what happens is we start working on a target, and then based on what comes up from that session, other things come to the surface, or we recognize that that wasn't actually the root of what they wanted to. Let me give you an example. It might be better this way. So I was working with someone on weight loss, and so we did a targeted session on weight loss. However, because we continued working together, doing some talk, some hypnotherapy, what we recognized was that a bigger part of this was perfectionism. So we then did a session on perfectionism. And after that session was when the biggest amount of weight loss happened,
Mm,
was after the perfectionism session. So it's kind of like putting a puzzle together.
yeah.
Um, and depending on how many pieces we need to fill in, then that's kind of how long it takes. But I would say that it's pretty lasting once we've worked on a specific issue.
Okay. All right. Huh. So you're like the subconscious surgeon. You're
There you
going
go.
in.
Oh my
You're
gosh.
going in. You're
I'm going
going
to
in.
adopt.
Yeah, you can have that one. I won't charge you for that one. I might trade you a hypno session for that one. But yeah, the subconscious surgeon. So you go in and dig
Yeah.
deep and find out what's in there and move some stuff around. Okay.
Yeah.
How I want to go back to the limiting beliefs part.
Mhm.
What are maybe an example or two might be easier to explain it, in terms of how a person's limiting beliefs or their beliefs about themselves, how can that be hurting them in their relationships, in their career? Because some people would say, well, like, no, that's not it. It's these other factors, like, oh, it's always the other people in the relationships. I've dated 5 people and they're all just idiots. It can't be me. It
Right.
can't be my limiting beliefs. What's an explanation or maybe an example that might help us
Sure.
understand?
Yeah, so I'll use myself as an example. So I mentioned that a lot of my issues were related to feeling safe. So I grew up as there were two Black people in my entire white town growing up, my brother and myself. So also experienced some trauma growing up. And so one of my limiting beliefs is I am not safe, other people are not safe. And so how that impacted my life was when you don't, so then it's kind of like you're wearing a pair of glasses and you see the world through the lens of I'm not safe, other people are not safe. So when you're in relationship, right, and you're saying like, oh, it's all the other people, so is it the other people, or is it that you don't feel safe enough to open up with other people based on your belief of I'm not safe and other people aren't safe, right? And so then you sabotage it. You sabotage the relationship in some way because you don't want someone to get too close because your belief is I'm not safe, right? How it was showing up for me was around like public speaking, being visible in my business, that kind of thing. I had to work on, feeling safe, putting myself out there to create the business and the financial life that I desire to have. Like you have to be seen in some ways to run a business. And
Yeah.
so if you don't feel safe being seen, you block it. I wouldn't have been able to do something like this and feel safe doing it. I probably would have been like, oh, like I probably would have made an excuse and shoved it off or something like that,
Mm.
right? Like I don't know that I would have accepted the opportunity. So that's really how a belief can show up in your life and impact multiple areas of your life.
Yeah, it makes a lot of sense. It makes me immediately think of avoidant and anxious attachment
Right.
styles.
Right.
especially with you talking about the feeling of not being safe.
Hmm.
And both of those, you know, running to opposite ends of the spectrum when they don't
Right.
feel safe. But that is the root issue. There's
Right.
one doesn't feel safe without a strong connection. The other one, when there is a strong connection, doesn't feel safe.
Right. Right.
Uh,
Yeah.
uh-huh. What about like other like mental health issues like depression, anxiety, PTSD, things like that? Have you found that the hypnotherapy helps that or works well with mental illness issues?
Yeah. I've worked a lot with anxiety. And I mean, anxiety, obviously, it's a clear one where I'm not safe, is a
Hmm.
big one that comes up there. I am not enough is often at the root of a lot of things, like depression or something like that. So, yeah, it's hard to say because for each person it's different, right?
Hmm.
So each person, and that's the interesting thing. We were talking a little bit about my podcast when I do the sessions. It's like two people might come in with money blocks, and the session is going to be very different based on their experiences. Or two people could come in with anxiety or depression, and what we get to the root is going to be very different based on their own life experiences.
Yeah.
It definitely helps. It's just hard to say what the root will be because it's so individual for each person. But with anxiety, there is a lot of I'm not safe, right?
Yeah. Yeah. Okay. Yeah. I was just wondering about that, about for people that are already, have a mental health diagnosis and have already been to, taking medication, been to therapy, things, and just still are having problems
Sure.
with
Yeah.
certain areas or continuing. And I just think of like let's say a person with, you know, depression and they're on maybe taking medication, maybe been to therapy, but still seem to be struggling with
Yeah.
some of those issues.
Yeah. I mean, so I'm fine being very open and candid. I was diagnosed with depression. And I was very much a naturalist in that I was against medication for a very long time. But then I went on medication, and that was really wonderful. But I still had some of these deeply rooted things. And so that's again, that's when I decided to do hypnotherapy. And that is really, for me, it's a combination. Like I still take
Mhm.
medication, and, I have no shame in that, right? It just it's a combination, and it's putting these things together, right? I think they work together. So
Yeah.
the therapy, really helped me. I had all this awareness, right, about like my trauma and different things, but and the medication helped as well, right? But it wasn't until I did the hypnotherapy that it just was an entirely different like body feeling. Like I felt safer in my entire being after I did it.
Yeah, and I'm on the same page as you. As my approach is extremely holistic
Right.
and practical in that medication is great. It absolutely serves a purpose,
Right.
and it's a piece of the puzzle, but it's
Yeah.
not the whole puzzle. Same with talk therapy. Absolutely great. There are many, many times and many, many people that benefit and need that therapy, that piece of the puzzle, but it's not the whole. Even if you went to therapy, talk therapy, and you got something out of it,
Right.
that's not going to change your diet. That's not going to change your
Right.
exercise.
Yes.
You know, all those other pieces of the puzzle that have an effect on your nervous system and the other parts of your body.
Yes.
And it sounds a lot like, what you're describing is by going in and sort of loosening the tension,
Mhm.
loosening and removing the blockages. It's taking the pressure that the subconscious is putting onto the nervous system.
Mhm. Mhm.
And when you do that, then the nervous system starts coming more into balance,
Right.
which relieves the pressure that it's been putting on the mind and the digestive system and the immune system and cardio, all these other things
Yeah.
that all work together. Awesome. Awesome.
Yeah.
I think you're taking away the skepticism here. and,
Well, I'm happy
and
to hear
most of the skepticism, and which I already knew this, before we even started talking, was because of what we see on TV and shows and things, where there is a lot of myths, a lot of misconceptions, and not a lot of understanding about what the process actually entails.
Yeah, you described that really well in the taking the pressure off, because the subconscious is always trying to do something good for us. And the pressure, I
Mhm.
think, is the way that our subconscious helps us pay attention to these things that it perceives as dangerous.
Mhm.
And so, but it's kind of like a smoke alarm going off whenever there's no smoke. It's like,
Mhm.
it's not, it doesn't do you any good. It just becomes this annoying. And for me, it was that heaviness that I was always carrying, even though my life was safe, but I was still
Yeah.
carrying a lot just from old and past experiences. And so alleviating that, and really what we call it is upgrading that part of our subconscious mind to let it know, like, hey, you're no longer 5 anymore, you're no longer 10 anymore, you are actually, and here's all the reasons why you're safe. But doing it at that subconscious level and getting the subconscious on board, it alleviates a lot of that tension, like you said.
Yeah, and I love the smoke alarm example. That's one I've heard before too, and that's a really good way, because when trauma happens, your body reacts, not just your mind. It's not just, okay, this bad thing happened, so I remember it. Your nervous system, your whole body kind of reacts, and it gets stuck. It can get
Yeah.
stuck in that. And like you said, there's a smoke alarm going off
Right.
subconsciously and in your body, but there's no fire. So
Right.
yeah, you have all these other issues, and it comes out in so many different ways. Um, and I think we have a decent understanding of all the effects. I don't think, definitely not foolproof. I think we're still learning. I think there's some things about the human psyche, the human consciousness, that we'll probably never fully understand. Even in science and psychology, there's people that debate what happens to you when you die.
Sure.
They don't even know a 100% answer to that. So there's
Yeah.
definitely parts that are worth exploring and being open to. And this is definitely one of them. So I appreciate you explaining this. All right. One last question that I had written down, and
Sure.
you kind of sort of already answered this too, but I want to ask it just to kind of be clear for the person that's listening and has this specific question.
Sure.
What if someone has maybe tried, or at least held the belief that they can't be hypnotized? Is that possible? Or is it just a doubt that they just have, and they haven't had the right process or person yet?
So it just takes me back to what hypnosis actually is, and the fact that it's not just the driving, it's getting lost in a good book or a movie. Like, most people have experienced those things. And so I often say to people, I don't necessarily know that you can't be hypnotized, but your belief definitely impacts and affects. I have people who come to me and say, I'm so on edge, I'm so anxious all the time, I don't know that you're going to be able to hypnotize me.
Hmm.
Which is why I do the safety work in the beginning, to really help them. I give them the examples that I've shared with you, the driving, the movie, the book, the safe place hypnosis, that kind of thing. And I also just tell people that you don't necessarily feel different. Like, you feel like you have your eyes closed and you're talking to me. So I think
Mhm.
that that kind of helps them, because I think people have this misconception that they're going to feel this out of body experience, that they're going to, it just feel very different. And I often say, like, you probably won't feel that different. But belief does matter. And so if someone is adamant, then it can impact the session, whether or not someone believes that this could work for them. And that in and of itself is something to explore, because that could
Hmm.
also come back to, what is this protecting you from, that you believe that, because sometimes it serves people to stay in a state of being unwell, right?
Mm-hmm.
And so is the resistance and the belief that you can't be hypnotized just a fear of what happens to me if I do get better? I don't know what my identity looks like or who
Ooh,
I am if I get better. And so there can be some fear, and some people can say, well, I can't be hypnotized, right?
yeah, that's deep. I like that. Yeah, that goes back to I was telling you that I listened to one of your podcast episodes that
Mhm.
fear of failure and fear of success. And
Right.
that kind of falls under that umbrella that there's a fear of getting better
Yeah.
because the mind is all about survival and safety, and the unknown is very unsafe.
Right.
Sometimes we would rather be stuck in the known because
Yes.
it's safe, even if we know it's bad.
Right.
And that can definitely have an impact on someone. So, okay. Well, dang. So I'm not going to get to float outside of my body, and that's kind of disappointing. But oh well,
Oh,
I'll I'll find another way. Uh, and I will say that I am one of those people that probably when I was younger, I had gone to therapy, and I had a therapist that talked about hypnosis. And I don't know, I don't remember now. It's been a very long time ago if we got fully into it or not. But at some point, I kind of had that idea that, well, I can't be hypnotized.
mm,
But the way you've described it, um, I've been practicing meditation for years now for my mental health and well-being. And
yeah.
I can say 100% that there have been times where I've been in meditation and it gotten so deep, so to speak. I don't
Mhm.
know any other way to describe it,
Yeah.
that I was hypnotized, that
Right.
I was not present.
Right. Yeah.
So I very easily see and understand your description and how that comes across. So I think most people, probably like myself years and years ago, that have this idea, well, I can't be hypnotized, period, because it's that misconception, because it goes back to what you said at the very beginning. People think that, oh, well, you have to be gullible to be able to be hypnotized because this person's going to try to tell you to do things against your will, or going to try to, you know, reach parts of your personality that you don't want anybody to know about. And there's, all these just off the wall misconceptions. And I think that's probably where people would come from if they think, oh, I can't do this process, because the process they're thinking of doesn't exist.
Right. Right. Yeah. I mean, there's stage hypnosis, it is a real thing. People do stage hypnosis shows, right?
Mm-hmm.
So that's a
Mm-hmm.
real thing. Um, but the actual therapeutic application of hypnosis in a therapeutic setting is nothing like that,
Yeah.
right? So that would be the differentiator, right? Because those
Yeah. Yeah.
things, they're real, they happen, but it's not what happens in a therapeutic setting.
Well, thank you very much for all of the explanation, helping everyone to understand a little bit better and see the benefits of this therapeutic process. Um, Tell us a little bit more about your podcast and your treatment, your therapy, how people can get in touch with you.
Yeah, so before I do that, I did
Yeah.
just want to say one thing because I think that it's really important and it's something that I talk with every single person who comes to me is that hypnotherapy is not for anyone who is struggling with epilepsy, any type of seizure disorder, dementia, personality disorder like borderline, schizophrenia, hallucinations, delusions, or psychosis. And that's really just for someone's own safety because it is a
Mhm.
different, we alter the brainwave states. And so we never want to put someone in a state where they might believe something is real when it's not, or that
Mhm.
they might go into some sort of psychotic break. Or I just wanted to share that because I think that it's
Okay.
really important for
Yeah.
people to
Yeah.
understand.
Thank you for laying that out. That's definitely important.
Yeah, yeah. So my podcast is called Shift Your Story, Change Your Life. And you can just go to shiftyourstorypodcast.com to, it'll take you to, I have YouTube, Apple, Spotify, and I love my podcast. It's my favorite thing in my business right now outside of seeing my clients. And it's in every other week I do a session where it's just me and my co-host Sophia. We talk through the ways that the subconscious roots of different things, like you said, fear of success, fear of failure. We have one coming out on perfectionism. And then on the alternate weeks, I actually take someone that I've never met before. I actually take them through a hypno coaching process where I guide them into hypnosis, and we get to the root of an issue that they have submitted. They've submitted a little form telling me a little bit about it, and we get to the root of that, and they get some clarity from our session together. So would love to have people check that out if they're interested.
Awesome. And all of your links will be in the description of this podcast. So if you're the person listening and you want to watch her podcast, listen in. If you want to visit her website and social media, all that's going to be in the description. So definitely check that out. Give Allie a follow and a like, and reach out to her if you're interested in those services. For our listeners, did you learn anything new today? If you didn't, I would be very surprised. But if you did, what did you learn? What questions do you still have? Let me know in the comments, and we'll try to get an answer for you if you have any questions. But like always, please subscribe, like, comment, and share to stay connected to this community of mental well-being as we all learn and grow together.